off your cameras and mute your microphones. So we will start. Thank you very much for being with us today for this first regional webinar on the very hot topic of reopening schools in the context of the COVID-19 crisis. On behalf of the main organizers, we would like to welcome you all and hope that these 2 hours will constitute a very good opportunity to learn from another about what is happening, but also how can the efforts countries make to be supported, especially by international agencies. I would also introduce Mrs. Adriana Fogelart from UNICEF, who's our co-partner in organizing this webinar, so that she can also address very briefly the meeting. Adriana, over to you.
Thank you very much. I just want to join Dagmara in saying very much welcome to this webinar, where we hope to discuss with you and to learn from you the challenges and the plans you have and with regard to the reopening of schools. I will ask Dagmara to also set out some of the rules of the game, and then I will come back to you with some more comments later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. About the rules, as you know, we planned a 2-hour meeting. Maybe we will exceed a little bit the time, but not by a lot. We have many speakers at the beginning, and then there will be a session for your questions, comments, and answers. So please be patient for the first presentations, because there will be some presentations on behalf of UN and also the countries we invited to share their experiences. And afterwards, there will be a session of question and answers, and you can use already the chat function on your screen near the participants symbols. There is a chat function where you can address your questions or comments either in English or Arabic. Our colleagues Khadija Ali from UNESCO and Frost David from UNRWA, they will manage the questions and comments, and then they will moderate the session where your comments and questions will go back to the participants. You have also the new function that was put on my Teams, the hand raising symbol. So if you want really to take the floor, it's really burning in this session, you can do that, but we would prefer to really interact via the chat function rather to save time. In terms of the presentations, we kindly ask countries to really stick to the 10 minutes that has been allocated for each country. And when 8 minutes are finished, you will hear a very sweet chime. So we will project a chime so that the speaker is aware that the time is coming to an end. Then also in terms of the proceedings, by the end of this meeting, there will be a wrapping up session with our colleague from the World Bank, Kamel Braham, and myself, and our colleagues from UNHCR and World Food Programme to talk about the follow-up steps, because this is the first webinar of the kind, and in mid-July we would like to have a follow-up, a more in-depth webinar, a longer webinar if possible, in both English and Arabic, so that we can also build on what is going to be said today, and also the experiences countries have with all this effort in regard school reopening and the new school year ahead of us to start in August or September. So this said, please again mute your microphones and your cameras, and I will hand over to the first speaker, to our director of the regional office for education in the Arab states, Dr. Hamed Al-Hamami. Dr. Hamed, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dagmara. Thanks to all. صباح الخير جميعا. Excellencies, Professor Tariq Shawqi, Minister of Education, Egypt. Excellencies, dear participants, my colleague, Mr. Ted Chaban, UNICEF Regional Director, colleagues from the UN family, ladies and gentlemen. I am happy to welcome you to this first regional webinar dedicated to the complex issues of school reopening following the COVID-19 crisis. This first webinar on the matter is meant to kick off the discussion in our Arab region, and we are collectively planning a second webinar, as mentioned now, in mid-July 20 tentatively, where we can have more discussion oriented to our national plan. The second webinar will take longer, and we hope to be able to go more in depth in order to learn from one another with regard to school reopening, promising policies and practice. I'm also hoping that you get in touch with our offices where they can coordinate and assist you to develop your national frameworks. Then we are hoping also to organize with UNICEF and other UN regional partners a ministerial meeting ahead of the new school year 2021 to review all education-related issues, including the 2030 SDG 4 efforts.
حياك الله أبو العبيد، الله يسعدك. الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Excellencies, this webinar is a concrete joint action of different agencies under the umbrella of the Global Education Coalition, UNESCO, UNICEF, the World Bank, and WFP are part of. I am happy to announce that our webinar was made possible through the efforts of these 4 agencies that have been joined by colleagues from UNHCR and UNRWA as organizing partners. This Global Education Coalition is there to provide guidance, but also concrete support to countries struggling with devastating effects of the COVID-19 crisis. In this webinar and the other event that will be conducted in the near future, we would like to acknowledge and take stock of the tremendous efforts countries have made, including our Arab regions, to adjust to situation never experienced before of school closure and to the introduction of wide-range social distance measures. Switching from face-to-face to remote learning was not easy, and many teachers and learners were not able to benefit from the advantage of radio, TV, or online learning modalities. At the same time, we have to be concrete by the overall learning losses the COVID-19 crisis induced, even in the case of those who could use remote learning modalities. The eagerly expected reopening of schools needs to be based on principles such as safety and precautions, given sanity measures and different forms of social distancing will have to be still considered. At the same time, we need to pay attention to the equity, quality, and accountability. We need to make sure that all learners go back to school and that we find effective strategies in dealing with learning losses while catering for everybody's well-being. My colleagues will be going more in depth about such principles spelled out in the recently released international framework for reopening of school. In the light of the above, we hope that today and also after the webinar, we will learn more about the Arab countries' situations and needs. We would like also to be able to turn crises into opportunities. We know that a lot of good things happened in different countries, such as the wide usage of new technology in education and learning, and the stronger ties between teachers and parents. In the process of reopening schools, we should build on such positive development while learning also from shortcomings and mistakes. I hope that today's discussion will help equally sustaining our enthusiasm for quality and equitable learning that the SDG 4 goals and targets aimed at promoting. We have been all confronted with problems never experienced before. Not even in conflict and emergency situation our region was confronted quite often with, unfortunately. But we have to keep optimistic and rely on our collective intelligence, creativity, resilience. I would like again to thank you for your interest in this webinar and the organizers for their effort in making such a quality dialogue even possible. I know we are all in many webinars and calls, and there's sometimes also a certain webinar fatigue occurring. I hope, however, that the today's discussion will constitute good ground for further developing of our ideas, policies, and strategies to make sure that reopening schools will benefit everybody. Some say that COVID-19 crisis have helped revealing some important gaps in education system, that is, if evidence was still needed, and that it pointed also to some possible effective solution that post-crisis should not ignore. Would like that the school reopening should not just make it possible for everybody to experience the joy of reassuming face-to-face interaction, but constitute also the threshold of making long-awaited positive change in our education system happen. I wish you a fruitful exchange and would like to ensure you of UNESCO and our partners' steadfast commitment to quality education and learning for all in our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hamed. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ted Shaiban, the Regional Director of UNESCO MENA Office. And before that, just to mention again that this webinar is the result of collective efforts of several partners, UNESCO, UNICEF, World Food Programme, UNHCR, UNRWA, and World Bank. So we are very grateful to the work that our colleagues put in making this possible. And Dr. Shaiban, to you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mr. Tariq Shawki, Minister of Education and Technical Education of Egypt, representatives of education ministries, my colleague, Dr. Al-Hammami from UNESCO, ladies and gentlemen. As Dr. Al-Hammami has said, the main purpose of this call is to help us learn from each other how we move ahead. I think we can safely say that the COVID-19 pandemic caught us all by surprise, and particularly in terms of the measures that were needed to minimize the spread and loss of life and to flatten the curve. This included, of course, drastic measures such as the closure of schools all over the world. I really, to begin, would like to start by commending how each one of you, each of your countries, responded very quickly to the challenge and placed alternative options for continued learning, be it through online platforms, TV, radio, the rapid distribution of print-based materials targeting those who did not have access to those online platforms or TV. And while the pandemic is far from over and we possibly need to learn to live with it, countries are preparing to loosen lockdown measures and reinitiate the economy, and with it, to ensure basic access to key services such as schools. I know that you are developing plans to and for this to happen in a safe way, ensuring that all children can come back and re-engage with learning, having the opportunity to make up for possible learning losses. So as we do this, I would like us all to work together to pay most attention to those that are vulnerable. The children who may not have had the opportunity to benefit from education on offer during the lockdowns, and those same children who are most at risk of not coming back after a long period of having been out of school as a result of the economic impact of the pandemic. In addition, as we look ahead, it'll be important to continue thinking about future flexibility of the education system, not only to be prepared for the next pandemic. Most experts feel that this is not going to be a linear way back, but a back and forth. But also, how can we use the opportunity of the return to include children who may have been out of school or who may have dropped behind in terms of their learning. New technologies offer great opportunities, online, but also offline. And I think what most countries will likely be looking at, which is some kind of blend between the two, to leave no child behind. When schools reopen, teachers will be key. If the current situation told us one thing, It is their crucial role in the education of our children. Any of us who are parents recognize how difficult it was for us to teach our own children at home, and the importance of those teachers. They deserve our utmost respect and support when schools reopen. So how can we prepare for them to be ready for that day and to address the many challenges that a restart of schooling will be faced with? Observing hygiene and spacing, dealing with catch-up learning losses, dealing with emotional and physical stresses that come from COVID among students, but also among staff. When useful and where useful, please count on us to be with you to support the training and support of these teachers. I am very much looking forward to learn about your plans, to discuss your challenges and possible solutions when moving to this next stage. I would like to reiterate on behalf of UNICEF and all partners present that we are here to support you. I now hand back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. We take your final points about learning again from one another and enhancing this understanding of what is happening, but also what is possible as solutions. And to do that, I will first now also give the floor to some of our colleagues from UN agencies to help us actually link what is happening at the regional level with what is happening also at the global level. Dr. Hamami mentioned about the Global Education Coalition and also this framework for reopening schools. So my colleagues, Maysoon Shehab from UNESCO Beirut, and then Mrs. Adriana Fogelar from UNICEF Regional Office in Mina, and Maria Tsvetkova from World Food Program. Please, the floor is yours, and please just bear with me a little bit to upload the presentation, but Maysoon, you can start actually. I don't hear her.
Maysoon, we don't hear you.
Yes. We don't hear you, Maysoon.
Okay, I was unmuted. Good morning, everyone. So do we see the slides? I can't see the slides yet. But anyways, I will start and will say that since the outbreak of the virus, we've been monitoring in Beirut what's happening in the region and in countries in relation to school closure and coronavirus. It's good to note that school closure in our region affected around 110 million students who were learning from home due to school and university closure. In response, countries have implemented a variety of measures. As you see, in our region, 89% of countries have opted to solutions related to TV learning and to online learning. And 17% of countries, they've opted also to other solutions such as self-study by sending papers to the house. The child will deal with the homework and the parents will help with instruction, and then they return back the papers to the ministry or to the school. Radio learning as well took 17% at the regional level. It's good to note here that some countries implemented many solutions, like 3 or 4 of the listed solutions, and other countries only opted for 2 of the solutions. Can we go to slide 2, Dakmara, please? Okay, so now while countries are working hard to ensure continuity of learning through alternative solutions, ministries of education are now working hard to plan for school reopening. As per last week, we've monitored countries in the region who are working on school reopening plans. And as we see, 44% of countries in the region announced their school reopening plans now. 28% are still in progress. And now during the presentations, we will hear from countries who have plans already and countries who are in progress. And 22% of the countries did not initiate the plans yet. We have also 6% of countries we couldn't get information about this matter yet. So if you go to slide 3, please, Dakmara. Slide 3 will focus or will give you an overview about the timing of school reopening. So planning the timing of reopening depends on the evolution of the pandemic, as all countries reported. It is indeed a national statement conveying a message that things are returning to normal when we reopen a school. Therefore, countries are taking their time to make this decision. As per all the plans we looked at in the region, most countries did not specify a fixed date yet. Some countries announced the month, August for some countries, including the Gulf, September for most countries, and they just specified the first week of September without a specific date. Few countries in the region announced a detailed school calendar with a fixed date, including registration dates, exact date for reopening, dates for beginning and end of semesters, for exam, for book distribution, even for vacation. And few other countries specified the reopening date, including a transition plan for the catch-up and remedial program. Palestine and Syria are examples we can share. We can move, Dakmara, to the 4th slide. So briefly, in 2 minutes, from the plans we received also, we've looked about common trends noted in school reopening plans in the region. Of course, a health factor is absolute priority and is of paramount importance. The plans mentioned clearly rules related to social distancing, hand washing, sanitation, etc. And they aligned that with guidelines from their ministries of health and from the WHO. Some countries, they specified the measures regarding sick leave for students and teachers in the reopening plans. And we've noted some flexibility given to exams, especially to grade 9 and 12. While health guidelines are very detailed in the plans, the academic guidelines are very generic up till now. We noted that incentive packages in the plans are not included so far. And all the plans mentioned that they are up to revision as per the health situation required. These are the common trends. The last slide I will share with you is about the urgent needs of the countries that we gathered. We ran a survey, and also based on our consultations with member states in the region, we can group the urgent needs as you see in the slides. So, of course, the most stressing need is related to health and sanitation. How do we prepare schools to provide health and sanitation for all students? And another main need expressed by countries throughout the survey is related to how to access like it's related to pedagogical preparedness, how to access progress during how to assess progress during closure, how to identify learning loss, how to organize remedial programs, ALPs, etc., and how to look at the effectiveness of what we've done during the past few months, specifically in relation to online teaching. A lot of questions are still pending in relation to high-stake exams, and countries are asking for examples and good practices that are taking place in the region. Of course, teachers, as mentioned by Dr. Hamad and by UNICEF colleagues, will be holding the burden of providing academic support as well as psychosocial support. So teacher readiness is something that was highly noted. The last thing is related to the readiness for another school closure wave if the situation requires that. So countries also are putting that into consideration, and they're asking for support within that. I will conclude by saying that needs may vary across the region for sure. Therefore, data and information collection might be necessary to determine priorities for sure. On the other hand, and despite all the challenges and difficulties the countries are facing, we guess that many lessons learned can be drawn from this experience. And this for sure will help us shape a better vision and a better future for education in the region. I would end here. Dakmara, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Maysoon. And now we will continue with the next slides by UNICEF and World Food Programme, please.
Thank you very much, Dakmara. Please, next slide. I would like to elaborate a little bit on the global framework that was referred to as an action, concrete action of the partnership that was created under the Global Coalition. This is mainly to stimulate the discussion around the important issue of what to do when schools reopen. So the framework is built around 4 key pillars. One is to make sure that schools are safe to be in, that learning will take place, that all children are coming back, including the ones most at risk of being excluded, and that there's taken care of the well-being and protection of children as well as of teachers. Now, all these policies, this all will require adjusted policies and financing. It's important to realize that this is not a usual back-to-school campaign, but it will have some specific implications. For example, what to do with physical distancing, how will that affect the way we organize next school year, and what will be the financial implications. And something which is not reflected in this slide, but very important, is how we do communicate this to the society, to communities, parents, and students themselves. The next slide, please. We'll go into some considerations for each of these pillars. The first one is about safe operations. So what are the implications for school management and organization? We need to look at it for making schools ready to be clean, to be places where we can observe proper hygiene before they open. And of course, we need to maintain that during the school year. This is, of course, quite challenging, particularly when we promote hygiene that depends on water, safe water and hand washing facilities. As we all know in our region, not all schools do have access to safe water and hand washing facilities. It's important that while during the pandemic, everybody had gotten used to observing good practices like regular hand washing, sneezing in the elbow, not shaking hands, not touching things we don't know. How do we maintain this during the next school years, and particularly with children? And some of our countries' children have not been outside for a long time, so they may not have actually practiced those kind of behavior because they were in these confined environments. The third point is related to the issue of physical distancing. What policy will be put in place? How do we implement 1.5 or 2 meters of distancing in the classrooms that are already overcrowded? Do we need to revert to a double shift, triple shifts, or one off and one on kind of approach? This will all, of course, have a lot of implications in terms also of financing the system, teachers to be ready to support that if we move, for example, to double or triple shifting or extending the school year, etc. And the last pillar of actions relate to what to do, the protocols in case of sicknesses. Next slide, please. So the second pillar is about learning, and that is possibly one of the our key concerns and the most difficult to touch. As we already saw, despite all the efforts putting in place alternatives to make sure that children are able to continue their education, we are not quite sure how successful we have been. And we may need to assume that many children were not able to keep up with the schoolwork, and some, particularly the younger children, may actually have lost some of the foundational skills such as reading and writing. As you can see, the challenges of accessing online learning in the graph, they relate to unequal access of ICT at home, and also to the skills of parents and teachers to actually support the learning of our children. And this is not particularly for any one country. It has been really a global trend. So we are all together in this challenge on addressing that. But it's important that we do address it, the learning gaps, because particularly our curriculum is rather sequential. So if we jump over this important phase that they may have lost and not been able to catch up with next school years, children may be at loss of dropping out later on, particularly those who already have challenges in keeping up with the schoolwork. So what can we actually do in terms of catch up? What do we do in terms of making sure that addressing physical distancing will not add to a continued learning loss throughout the next school year? Next slide, please, and I hand over to my colleague Maria from World Food Programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. So then another issue that needs to be addressed is that of inclusiveness, and that's particularly relevant for our children. How do we make sure that all children are back to school, especially those that were already at the risk of dropping out of school pre-COVID, and that they actually do come back? And how do we address that? Whether through waiving of school fees and other direct costs, whether through scaling up social protection schemes that target the most affected households with kids in these households, or incentives to children at risk of not coming back to school, be it cash or food or the learning materials. Yeah, and then we talk, lastly, but not the least, we talk about the well-being and protection, and that translates into communication and awareness raising, addressing various fears of communities, which are plenty, as well as trying to avoid the stigmatization and discrimination of people that have been affected by COVID. So it also means getting life back to normal as fast as possible, including critical nutrition, school feeding, cash incentives, health, vaccination campaigns, and so on. As well, and then lastly, dealing with stress that students and the school staff, the teachers might experience while dealing with this pandemic. Lastly, let me conclude by saying that we in the region have the various UN agencies, including the World Bank, so UNESCO, UNICEF, UNHCR, UNRWA, ourselves, WFP, and the World Bank have launched a regional call for joint action aimed at common approach towards supporting ministries of education, regional knowledge products to support country-level action, promoting sharing of concerns and solutions. So let me conclude then, and let me hand over to the moderator.
Thank you, dear colleagues from UNESCO, UNICEF, and World Food Programme for this introduction to the issue of the global coalition and also the framework, the global framework to reopen schools that has to be, of course, adjusted to regional circumstances and conditions. And for that purpose, we will now invite different countries from our Arab region to present their experiences and plans for school reopening. So I will hand over to my colleague Maysoon Shehab to moderate this part of our program. But before, I want to say that given to time constraints, we could invite only few countries. We have 4 countries plus UNRWA to present, and each again has like 10 minutes allocated. At the end of 8 minutes, I will produce chime sounds or very soft chime sound for the speaker to be aware that 2 minutes are left for their presentations. And the participants, again, please feel free to interact with us through the chat function. And then during the next session of questions and answers, if you want to also talk, you can raise your hand and use the hand raising function to signalize that you would like to also talk. The other countries that could not present now, for instance, Jordan or Tunisia or Oman, and ABEX and many other of our partners, they will be programmed for July. So we promise that in mid-July, there will be a longer webinar, and we will try to accommodate then more speakers so that we can enrich these experiences. So Maysoon, please, over to you.
Thank you, Dakmara. Thanks, colleagues. So it's my pleasure to moderate this session, of course, with our distinguished speakers from the region. Without further delays, let's start immediately this dialogue with His Excellency Dr. Tariq Shawqi, Minister of Education and Technical Education in Egypt. Your Excellency, if you're with us, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning. I hope you hear me. I'd like to greet my colleagues from UNESCO Beirut, Dr. Hamad, of course, and all the staff and all the dignitaries from all the participating UN agencies. Maybe I'll use the 10 minutes to share with you what we have been doing in Egypt. Now, prior to the COVID-19, we have been really doing a massive education transformation. We have started a new education system back in September 18, started from KG1 and now arrived until grade 2. Now, parallel to that, we have been reforming our high school education also since 2018. We introduced a national learning management system on which we have put together digital learning objects for the curricula of grades 10, 11, and 12. And we secured a device for each student in high schools. We started the wave in 2018, earlier, before the COVID. And every student in grade 10 and now grade 11 does have a state-of-the-art tablet allowing access to the content we prepared, and also making sure that every student has access to the internet so they're not left behind, and preparing the ground for electronic examinations for high schools. That was all planned to knock out our exit exam, the famous Sanawiya Amma that has been there for years, and all this preceded COVID-19. When this epidemic struck, we had to stop or suspend schooling on March 15th, which is almost 2 months ago. We were really not starting from zero, so we were able in about less than a week to put together a major digital library in which we put together curricula from KG1 to grade 12 in Arabic and English, in the form of digital learning objects, sorted out and mapped to curricula, to the learning outcomes. So it's not really static PDF files or video lessons. It's a very unusual digital library in the sense that it has, for each lesson, for each school year, a number of digital learning objects from renowned world publishers that would help students understand the specific learning outcomes. That particular library has received already more than 100 million page views. And for those of you who don't remember the size of the problem in Egypt, we have 22 million students in the system, which is a huge, huge number, a big challenge. And we have also 1.3 million teachers. All of this in about over 55,000 schools. So we really have our hands full. So as we suspended schools, we put together this digital library I'm describing, which became the main reference for students. We also beefed up the learning management system we had for high schools, which is now used by grades 10, 11, and 12. All private tutoring centers have been shut down in Egypt, which is a major accomplishment. So students now can go to one of two digital libraries. KG to grade 12 are on something called study.ekb.eg. The high schoolers have a more intense learning management system that they study from. But then we got to confront the assessment issue. How do we finish the school year not leaving any children behind? And in order to do that for grades from grade 3 to grade 9, for those school years, we replaced the actual exams with projects, with graduation projects. So we started teaching them how to do a research project, even from grades as low as third grade. Now that has created a buzz in town because we have about 15 million students in those years from grade 3 to grade 9. So the process of developing the projects, explaining what to do, preparing kids and parents for that was a national undertaking, honestly. And we also put together in a record time another learning management system. We call it a social learning platform in every one of the 50,000 schools. We have a platform now, a simple LMS installed everywhere in the country. As we speak, it has on it 12 million student subscribers, 1.3 million teachers, and 1 million parents. The idea here is to have a platform over which students and parents and teachers interact. We have created 2.5 million virtual classes across the country, populated them with students and teachers. So the idea is to discuss projects, have the teachers talk back, answer questions, prepare students, and students across the country, even from tiny villages and remote areas, have uploaded their finished projects over the platform. That has ended yesterday, and we received 15 million or more projects on the system. Now, that system didn't exist before COVID-19. So just for you to grasp the total picture, we have a digital library for everybody that has terabytes of digital learning objects and received over 100 million hits in the last 2 weeks. That's the main digital content for study. We have a specific learning management system for high schoolers. Devices are in the hands of over 1.2 million in grades 10 and 11. For grades 3 to 9, we replaced exams with project-based learning and project-based graduation. We also already corrected about 80% of the projects. So we're going to announce their grades soon, including grade 9, which is a critical year, as you know. We installed a platform across the schools called Edmodo, which is used now by parents and students and teachers alike. The only thing remaining for this year, oh, I forgot to say, we also made a streaming station, something like Netflix, where videos on demand and live streaming as well, 7 days a week. That's not the TV channels, which we have 2 of them, but we also have streaming online using Zoom and Teams. We have classes of 10,000 kids or more that are very popular for people preparing for grade 12 exams. The only thing we have to do, it was a big debate in the country, is the grade 12 exams. Those, by law, we have to do them in the classical form. We have to bring them to a test to be tested on the ground. So we cannot do that remotely, and we have that for general and for technical education. The problem we have is in general education, grade 12, we have 652,000 students. And for technical education, the last year, we have 777,000. So all in all, we have over 1.4 million students. We decided to start those exams on June 21st. There's a big debate in the cabinet, as you might think. And we have doubled the number of exam stations and locations. So the ثانوية عامة will be held third week of June. And we have lots of precautions for taking care of the health of the students and their parents and the teachers during those exams. They will take about a month and a half. So we finish those exams by mid-August. So when you were talking about school years next year, this is a big question in Egypt, but of course it's going to be delayed. We usually start our school year in the third week of September. This year, it's likely to be in the first or second week of October because of the pushback in our last year exams and the subsequent university admission delays and so on. University exams are also delayed. So there is a phase shift here in terms of school start next year. I had to say also that grade 10 and 11 have been tested fully as if there was no COVID-19 because they do have full suite of technology. So they were able to be tested electronically on the cloud for 1.2 million students while they were at their homes. So this is really something we're very proud of. We were able to do that. Next year, we'll be able to do that for grades 10 to 12 and replace completely the in-class exam with electronic exams. That has been really perfected. As for next year, it's still a sketchy picture. We are not sure of many things related to COVID-19 and its evolution and what will happen in the next 2 months. So it's really very hard to make concrete decisions, but the date is not fixed, of course, but we expect it to be first or second week of October. We are thinking of definitely a form of blended learning, not for all school years, but for many of them. The 22 million students we cannot really bring down at the same time. So we have to group them into 3 groups or so and divide the week into 2-day segments so that 1/3 of the student population will attend 2 days a week, then continue online and so on, so that we break the capacity, the density in the classrooms to 1/3 and keep some social distancing and so on. We have bigger problems with youngsters, with KG1 and nurseries, actually. It's a much more difficult question than we do for middle and high school. We have a very solid IT infrastructure that was there and got developed. Reception of parents and students and teachers to the technology has been helped really by this time period. So we have jumped ahead really fast in that area. But we need to ensure access to everybody. So we are thinking of new solutions to guarantee access to every child if we were to use the technology heavily, and the cost associated with this change. And as many of you have said, the teacher is really lagging behind here. And now the ball is taken by the students and the parents. The teacher is the last one in that race. So we have to prepare the teachers for this, for the new role as coaches, as people who direct students, not instruct them directly, the new way of helping kids behind the screens. This is a big challenge. We are working on it, but I'm not sure if I have stayed within time or not, but thank you for your listening.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Amazing efforts by Egypt for sure took place before COVID even. Countries like Egypt are among those leading change in the region, employing multimodal approaches and building innovative partnerships, really. I would like to take this opportunity, and you're with us, to also share with all participants Egypt is an example for cross-country collaboration. You've granted users from neighboring countries access to the Egyptian Knowledge Bank, which is an online government library housing resources like K to 12 grade lessons for educators, researchers, and students. And maybe during the questions and answers, you can elaborate on that. We're looking forward to learn, of course, about the blended learning you plan for next school year. Thanks so much, Dr. Shawqi, and we appreciate your time and your presence with us. Allow me, please, now to move to Lebanon. And I'm happy to invite now the Director General of Education in Lebanon, Mr. Fadi Yara, who is working on managing a multi-layer crisis in the country, actually, and in the sector. We will hear from him about also how Lebanon responded to the crisis and what are the plans for school reopening in the coming month. Mr. Yara, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Your Excellency, Dr. Tariq Shawqi, Dr. Hamami, representative of UNICEF in the region, TED, and definitely the colleagues from World Food Program and all the attendees. It's a pleasure to be with you, and we should thank all the organizers about this important webinar, and mainly UNESCO Regional Office in Beirut. I'd like to talk today about our experience since February 29, when we closed due to COVID-19 the schools, and immediately we launched a distance learning tracks, and mainly divided into 3 main streams: the TV programming, virtual classroom, and digital resources based on an online and mainly Teams, Microsoft Teams support, and the traditional low-tech way, where kind of group WhatsApp and supported by paper to be handed to the students from their parents. Well, the original goal of this distance learning was to maintain the connection with the learners and to make sure that we share information about COVID, and to basically cover the maximum of our curriculum, and basically mainly those who are sitting for national exam, and definitely to get this experience and build on it for future practices, and to monitor the approach and evaluate it. So 8 weeks from this initiative, where are we? We have challenges, but we have real opportunities. The challenges are mainly technical and logistics, limited data, cost of data, the connectivity, geographic spread all over the country. This is important. Cultural is another important challenge. Not all parents are literate, or they do have devices. And Lebanon is small, but we are talking about everyone. Over than 1 million students with refugees. We have the same number of refugees in the basic education as Lebanese. So it's a big challenge in settlements. It's a big challenge within the students who need to get education in a distance way. So socioeconomic crisis was beginning in Lebanon since October, also was a major challenge to reach. And definitely, if we talk about education, and a lot of we're educators here, there is an issue of quality assessment and what outcomes we're getting from this distance learning. And it's important to measure and to see how we improve the education outcome. So this is mainly. Well, last Sunday on May 17, after studying various scenarios, the Minister of Education announced the cancellation of official exams for grade 12. And and he announced that the end of school year will be after completion of the distance learning program, and it was approved by the Council of Ministers and supported his decision. This was not an easy decision. All these decisions are taken through close coordination with a national committee for COVID-19, and mainly in close coordination with the Ministry of Health. So the health dimension is pushing us to do a lot of measures and decisions. So how to do an balancing between health guidelines and pedagogical objectives. And this is a major concern for the whole, I will say, the education family, which are parents, students, teachers, and schools, and ourselves at the Ministry of Education. And this is important to put flexible scenarios on the reopening, and so we'll be ready and can be adapt this readiness in case of any development, and mainly the last information from COVID. So COVID is putting us on the loop and impacting any decision. So the planning for reopening are the follows: mainly safety and well-being, learning for all, and quality of learning. These are the major pillars of our reopen strategy that will be, which is in progress, but it will be flexible in a way to be adapted at beginning of September and all over next year. Safety is important once we have evidence-based, adequate evidence is gathered on safety of reopen school, what will be, how to move. And also implement hygiene and social distancing is important. So ideas of alternating days of schools. What we are seeing now in Europe is schools are opening up with 20 to 30%, which means that the distance learning will stay and continue with us, and we could be also from possible closure due to COVID or to any socio-economic challenges in Lebanon or security issues, there might be closure. So it's important to have different scenarios on the reopen. Learning for all. This should address all the barriers to education, and mainly the most vulnerable students, and mitigate all these barriers. As I mentioned, we have around 250,000 students in formal education from Syrian refugees displaced in Lebanon. And we're working closely with the UN and the international community and the UN agency with UNICEF, country office, with UNESCO, with WFP on school feeding, and with UNHCR on this. So this is very important. We would like to see the school as a social hub and focus on the most vulnerable. We would like to see school, when we reopen, is having activities after supports, homework support, remedial classes, languages. And definitely the school, when we reopen, should be inclusive and inclusive in terms of environment that take into consideration all students, and mainly special needs. So it is very important also to continue the implementation of our child protection policy in learning spaces. While we're working on a contingency planning in case there will be fluctuation between distance learning and physical learning in schools. It could be, it depends, but we need to be ready. So we are developing a holistic distance learning strategy. We're gathering data where we have now information on the use of distance learning. On average, we have 50%, over than 50% of students and of schools are using distance learning and the different tracks. And we see that children in grade 9 and above are using more than the smaller children. That's why we put on our digital library, YouTube, some animation movies, so we would access it to younger ages. The idea is equity. The idea is to try, even with distance learning, to reach all children and make our system resilient for the future with the reopening and others. So this is the way we're trying to work, but also it's an opportunity to extend the access to other children who are usually traditionally they are not targeted. Children in hospitals, in prisons, children who are studies at home with difficulties of commuting, and this we might have it because of the effects of Corona and the effects of other challenges. So the idea is to build, to consolidate the distance learning, but to have clear steps. Taking into consideration the safety when we enter back to school, and all this can happen in collaboration and communication with the communication and in collaboration with our partners. So internal coordination and communication internally inside the public institutions and communication internally in terms of the country with the stakeholders is important, but also partnerships and collaboration with donors, multilateral organizations, the UN agencies, building on the experience and the know-how of our partners, mainly those who are preparing today this important webinar today. NGOs are very important to ensure to reach out to all the students. The idea that we should not leave anyone behind, and we don't want, because of socioeconomic or because of the war or because of COVID, to lose a complete generation. So clear communication and ongoing cooperation is important, and this would lead all of us to an inclusive, quality, resilient education for all. And I would like to thank again all the organizers and the attendees for this important webinar.
Thank you, Mr. Fadiera, for this very rich presentation. I would like just to remind everyone that school closure in Lebanon took place earlier at the beginning of the year due to demonstrations. So we lost a lot of days even before COVID in Lebanon. Therefore, the challenges here are multiplied for you. You've always been stressing that no linear approach is encouraged throughout our meetings with you, as it can provide the sector with the opportunity to assess and control the situation before general reopening. Of course, Lebanon is one of the countries who is facing immense challenges to providing all children quality education, including the refugees in our country. We're working closely with you and your team and feel the heat of the situation that you're facing. Thanks again for noting and reminding all of us on matters related to equity, quality, safety, protection, and well-being of all children. So we move to our next speaker from UAE, and I will now invite Mr. Shamis to our the expert and
Good afternoon. I think the voice
I think we need to mute those colleagues. They need to mute.
Yes, we need to mute all the mics. If I can start?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the organizers. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies. It's good to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about our system in the UAE. Alhamdulillah, we have a future strategy and a futuristic minds in our government, which is a gift and a talent that leaders in the UAE own. This resulted on the existing of business continuity plans that we have developed in all of the different sectors, including education. Education in the UAE is considered one of the most important sectors where our leaders have invested a lot to have a state-of-art education model, which leads us to talk a little bit now about the school, the Emirati school model, which we call now the Smart Emirati School Model. Our Emirati school model has differentiated curriculum to serve the needs and the differences of our students. We have different tracks for the high school. For cycle 3, we have the elite, advanced, general, and applied streams. Students can be enrolled according to their abilities and level, of course, also for their needs. The model was built to close the gap between high school and also higher education, and to ensure smart enrollment for major or specialization in higher education. Not forgetting also, we have prepared curriculum ready to serve the whole model from pre-KG to cycle 2. A curriculum which is modified for the differences of our students. In 2012, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid announced the launching of the Smart Learning Model, which is a platform that we use that was piloted in 50 schools that time. From that time to 2020, the platform had a progression plan where we have all of our public schools and some private schools also within the platform. We have onboarded all of the students. We have enhanced the infrastructure of the platform, the learning management system. We have also built in different education platforms within the system itself, and our staff were also well equipped by training to use these platforms. The smart learning model and also the Emirati school model ensures that all of our students should have a device where the Ministry of Education provides that. The model consists of complex features to achieve the 2071 strategy of the UAE, where we're having the concept of lifelong learners equipped with the 21st century skills, serving their needs and interests through easy access of wide range of data and information model. The model has two types of learning. We have distant direct learning, which requires a teacher. Also, there is fixed timing for it. We have also it requires also the participation of our students and the explanation of the teacher. We have the self-learning, which does not require a teacher. It is more flexible in timing, and also it increases the knowledge of our students and the skills by using the platform by themselves. And also there is interactive learning between the students and the teacher by using the self-learning platform. When the decision came with COVID-19 to close the school buildings, we turned the blog on our 100% plan of smart learning. So we had a blended type of learning. We had the distant learning, the one that I just talked about in the previous slide, and the self-learning model. In order to do that, we have created lesson plans for our students to have. For instance, I will give an example for Cycle 3. Cycle 3 classes starts from say 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock with actual classrooms, used virtual classrooms with the teachers, and then in the afternoon they have other platforms open for them to do the self-learning. Of course, there is flexibility in the hours for the self-learning, but for the morning classes, we have fixed timing for it. The teachers' load are calculated the same in the direct learning, and in the afternoon, we have the student support system where teachers are having office hours. I will move to the other slide where we been able to achieve all of that because we have an ecosystem within the UAE. Our platform, the main platform, is called Al Manhal, and Manhal is an educational platform that has all of our first student portfolios, teacher portfolios, all the curriculums, all the outcomes needed, and the e-system platforms equipped within this system. For having virtual classes, we are using within Al Manhal system, we have the Microsoft Teams and the learning management system that I just talked about. We also have adaptive learning platforms which are directed to subjects like we have Alex for sciences and math. We have Century, we have Aleph, which is, I'm proud to say that Aleph is a platform that is built within the UAE that has more than 2,000 videos for the subjects where students can use and access all the time. Of course, we have also the e-assessment. We have the learning curve for the professional development of our teachers. In the upcoming two slides, I just gave I'm giving an example of the platforms that we're using to for our students with equipped with educational videos, interactive activities. This is an example. LD1 is our platform where we have all of our books uploaded. In that accessible to parents, to teachers, to students. Of course, to complete the model, we have the e-assessment system, which is built in within the LMS. We are using Checkpoint. We are using Checkpoint in the LMS as the end of unit exam, where teacher makes the exam available for the students, and it has a flexible timing during the week where student can answer and then finish the unit. We have also Swift Assess, where we use the end of term exam, and it consists of writing capabilities, multiple choice. Both systems are e-systems where a teacher can evaluate and assess the students within the system by itself. Alhamdulillah, we have a saying here that learning never stops. Our day-to-day operation since COVID-19 began has been up and running, even from distance. The investment that began that was contributed actually by our leaders showed its fruits when the decision was taken to close the schools. If we were directed by our leaders to reopen our schools and go back to normal, we are ready to go back to the new normal. Alhamdulillah, all of our sectors and administrations has been working in a comprehensive transformation process to reopen the school, to ensure quality of curriculum and assessment platforms, educational resources and infrastructure, teacher training, high level of communication and awareness, technical support. I'll talk about establishing a digital library and the precautionary measures of students' well-being. Now, to ensure smooth opening, we have also prepared our plan and considered curriculum and evaluation, infrastructure, curriculum matrix, and also the preparation of educational staff.
Ms. Lubna, one.
Yes, here. 1 minute. Okay, I'll be done quickly. For the educational resources, we have replaced the printed books with e-books to avoid the possible contamination. We have replaced the educational resources to minimize the contact between students. We have reduced also the usage of laboratories to have virtual labs, and we have also decreased the number of hours where we ensure quality education delivered to our students. We have also prepared a precautionary measures to open the schools by
sorry, please mute your microphones, the people, because it's interfering with the speaker. Sorry, thank you.
It's okay. We're ready to go to open the schools if our leaders decide that by different measures that were taken, precautionary measures by community spacing that we are assuring, school sterilization, periodic inspection, precautionary measures also in suspecting infections by making different types of checking, and also we have a 24 task force ready to serve all of our students. We are raising the awareness of our students by using 3 minutes every day from the first period to talk about what's happening now, COVID-19, and giving more information to our students about that. We went a little bit ahead by creating a digital library where we will have more than 10,000 already ready, 10,000 videos for our students to use in the beginning of September if we decide that we will not open the schools. Of course, our teachers are the heart of education. We have a training center in the UAE, which
Ms. Lubna,
yes.
We have to stop here, please. Thank you. We can, or you can continue throughout the discussion, maybe about the other points you meant to share with us. I know your experience is very rich, and 10 minutes is not fair, really, for that. We've seen from your presentation, and we know that the UAE is becoming a regional hub for learning, especially since there are many factors that support this, whether at the political, economic, technological, or social levels. All this within a long-term strategy the UAE has put for this. Thanks also for sharing some slides regarding the reopening plan you have and noting comprehensive factors to be taken into consideration. As I said, 10 minutes is not fair, but to be able to accommodate and to be able to give the floor to as many countries as possible. Thanks again, and now we'll move to Morocco. And I will invite Mr. Fouad Shafi'i, the Director for Curriculum at the Ministry of National Education and Vocational Training, to also share the experience of Morocco in 10 minutes. I would like to note that Mr. Shafi'i may choose to speak in Arabic. And for this, you will be speaking for 7-8 minutes, Mr. Shafi'i, and then we'll do a brief recap after that in 1 or 2 minutes. The floor is yours. تفضل دكتور شفيقي.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. In Morocco, it's morning. شكرا على دعوة المملكة المغربية للتحدث في هذا المؤتمر. سعادة الدكتور حامد الحمامي مدير مكتب اليونسكو بالمنطقة العربية، السيدات والسادة، سعيد بأن أتقاسم معكم تجربة المملكة المغربية خلال 3 أشهر الماضية وما نحن بصدد التحضير له لاستقبال السنة الدراسية المقبلة. فقط بعض عناصر سياق الحديث. فالمملكة المغربية حوالي 36 مليون نسمة، منها 10 ملايين هم طلاب في مختلف المستويات، من رياض الأطفال إلى حدود السنة الثانية، إلى حدود التعليم الجامعي. توقفت الدراسة في المغرب في 14 أذار من هذه السنة، بعد أن كان الطلاب قد تلقوا حوالي 75% من المقررات الدراسية لمختلف المستويات. مباشرة بعد توقف الدراسة الحضورية أعطيت انطلاقة للدراسة عن بعد، ووضعية المغرب لا تختلف عن ما تم الإشارة إليه في التدخلات السابقة من استعمال مختلف القنوات التلفزية والمنصات الإلكترونية، ثم الأقسام الافتراضية، واستعمال الراديو بالنسبة لبعض المواد العلوم الإنسانية. وآخر شيء قمنا به هو إعداد كراسات لمراجعة برامج الأسدوس الثاني، ستوزع خلال الأسبوع المقبل إن شاء الله، وستساعد الطلاب على مراجعة كل ما فاتهم، أو الطلاب الموجودين في مناطق لا تسعفهم الحظوظ للارتباط بشبكة الإنترنت أو بقنوات التلفزة. التعليم عن بعد يستمر حاليا إلى نهاية شهر حزيران، وقد أعلنت الوزارة خلال هذا الأسبوع على أن الدراسة لن تتوقف إلى نهاية السنة، إلا أن الامتحانات نهاية السنة تقتصر فقط على مستوى الثانوية العامة التي برمجت خلال شهر تموز المقبل. بالنسبة لمختلف المستويات، الانتقال من فصل إلى الفصل الأعلى يتم من خلال مداولات مجالس الأقسام باعتماد النقط المحصل عليها، العلامات المحصل عليها في 3/4 برنامج السنة. بالنسبة لقرارات إعادة فتح المدارس، كما قلت فالامتحانات الثانوية العامة ستكون خلال شهر تموز المقبل، والدخول المدرسي سيكون خلال شهر أيلول بمعنى الخريف المقبل. وقد قررت الوزارة على أن يخصص شهر أيلول المقبل بكامله لمراجعة ما فات للطلاب أو ما لم يتمكن بعض الطلاب خصوصا في المناطق ذات الخصاص لإدراكه أو لتعلمه. ولهذا فمن بين الصعوبات الكبيرة التي نواجهها الآن هو تحضير منهاج مكيف خاص بشهر أيلول فقط لمراجعة الأسدوس الثاني للسنة الماضية قبل الانتقال إلى المستوى الأعلى. تنطلق الدراسة في السنة الموالية في شهر تشرين الأول أكتوبر المقبل، وحسب الحالة الوبائية أو تطور الحالة الوبائية الحمد لله الأمور تتحسن، ولكن هناك بعض الاحتياطات. فوضعت مبادئ. المبدأ الأول، وقد سمعته أيضا في كلمة الزميل المتحدث من وزارة التربية في لبنان، المبدأ الأول هو صحة الطلاب وصحة المدرسين والطواقم التربوية فوق كل اعتبار. المبدأ الثاني بطبيعة الحال هو عدم انقطاع الدراسة كيفما كان الحال، بشكل حضوري أو بشكل عن بعد أو هما معا. المسألة الثالثة هو الحرص على أن جودة التعليم والتربية الملقنة للطلاب تكون في نفس مستوى الجودة إن لم تكن أحسن من ما سبق، خصوصا مع استثمار كل الموارد الرقمية والإلكترونية المتوفرة. بعض الإجراءات تشبه ما جاء في كلمة اليونيسيف، فمبدأ التباعد الاجتماعي يبدو أنه سيكون من المفروض أن نطبقه خلال السنة المقبلة بكاملها. وضع حواجز بين الأفراد، وهذا يفترض تمكين الطلاب والمدرسين من كمامات يستعملونها أثناء الحصص، تقليص الطلاب داخل الفصول، هذا أمر مؤرق على الأقل بالنسبة إلينا في المغرب. فحينما سننتقل من 30 إلى 40 طالب كما هو الحال اليوم في الفصول. بمعنى اليوم عندنا حوالي 210,000 فصل دراسي في المملكة المغربية. سننتقل إلى ما يشبه 400,000 فصل دراسي. وأنتم تعرفون أن التجهيزات لا عدد المدرسين ولا عدد القاعات لا يمكن إضافة قاعات جديدة، وبالتالي سيكون مطلوب مننا وسيكون مطلوب من وزارة التربية أن تقوم بتنظيم يكون فيه تعليم حضوري وتعليم عن بعد مكمل، وهذا تحدي كبير سنواجهه بالنسبة للشهور المقبلة. هناك أيضا تحدي توفير جداول حصص مكيفة بحيث لا يحضر الطلاب إذا استمرت الجائحة إلا بعض الأيام في الأسبوع لكي يتركوا القاعات للفصول الأخرى. تكليف بعض الأنشطة التعليمية مثلا كالأنشطة الرياضية الجماعية أو العمل الجماعي داخل الفصول، فهو لا يستقيم مع مبدأ التباعد الاجتماعي. أيضا وضعنا من بين المداخل أن الأطفال في وضعية إعاقة أو أصحاب الهمم والفتيات في وضعيات هشة يجب الانتباه إليهم. وفي المغرب نتوفر على تجربة تشايلد من الطفل إلى الطفل، بحيث أنه في بداية كل سنة يقوم مدراء المدارس بتعبئة الطلاب للبحث عن من لم يلتحقوا بالمدارس، ويتم تعبئة المجتمع المدني لدعوة الأسر لالتحاق أبنائهم بالمدارس. بالنسبة للامتحانات فقد قمنا بعدة إجراءات لإجراء اختبارات الثانوية العامة خلال شهر يوليوز المقبل، من استعمال قاعات الرياضية الكبيرة رياضة، ثم تباعد، ثم تعقيم بعد كل اختبار إلى غير ذلك. شروط الواجب اتباعها بعد افتتاح المدارس. هناك على الأقل 3 شروط أساسية، هي أولا التعقيم المستمر للقاعات، التشوير داخل المدارس بحيث يدخل الطلاب من منطقة ويخرجون من منطقة أخرى كي لا يقع الاكتضاد، ثم توفير الكمامات للطلاب خلال الحصص، ويلزمنا تقريبا كمامتين لكل طالب، بمعنى أنه نحتاج إلى 20 مليون كمامة في اليوم للطلاب. وضع مدونات للسلوك خاصة بالطلاب، وهذه المدونات يتم إعدادها الآن على شكل مطويات سوف توزع وتوضع داخل المدارس. إعطاء تدريبات للمدرسين وللمدراء للاستئناس بمنصة التعليم عن بعد والأقسام الافتراضية. أمر لأن الوقت يداهمني. هناك أيضا خطة للتواصل مع الآباء، فمنذ انطلاق أزمة كوفيد أصدرت الوزارة حوالي 40 بلاغ، ونحن دأبنا على أن نكون صرحاء مع الأسر في كل المحطات ونخبرهم أول بأول، وهذا يساعد أيضا على انخراط الأسر والطلاب في كل ما نقوم. نحتاج دقيقة إن سمحتم.
طيب دقيقة واحدة تفضل.
نحتاج إلى مرحلة من اليقظة، لرب ضرة نافعة، فما وقع مع كوفيد ساعد بشكل كبير على تسريع وتيرة رقمنة الدروس، بحيث نتوفر اليوم على أزيد من 6500 مورد رقمي موضوع على بوابة الوزارة، أزيد من 3500 حصة دراسية مسجلة على البوابة أيضا. ومن التحديات الكبرى كيف سنفتح إقامات الطلاب الداخليات داخل المدارس السنة المقبلة في الدخول المدرسي المقبل، كيف سنتفاعل مع الجهات أو الأسر التي لا تتوفر على تجهيزات إلكترونية في البيوت، كيف سنتفاعل مع المدرسين الذين لا يتوفرون على تدريبات. كل هذه تحديات أتمنى أنه من خلال النقاش نرجع إليها إن شاء الله، ونطور خبراتنا بمشاركة مختلف الدول العربية. وشكرا.
شكرا دكتور شفيقي على هذا العرض المفصل العلمي والدقيق. اسمح لي أن أنتقل إلى اللغة الإنجليزية. So colleagues, Dr. Shafiqi presented a very well detailed plan for opening. He mentioned that exams will still be held for grade 12 and online learning will still go till end of June. He presented really a school reopening detailed plan based on several assumptions. We will share the slides with you for all the details because the slides note all what he was mentioning in his presentation, including the operations to be taken at each level when schools reopen. Thank you, Dr. Shafi'i, and we move now to the last presentation we have. We're tight a little bit on time, so I will now invite Ms. Caroline Contract, the Director of Education, UNRWA, and Ms. Frost Dabit, the Education Program Specialist at UNRWA, to take the floor and to kindly stick to the 10 minutes.
We'll try our best.
Yeah, I have, Caroline, just a second. I have to ask whether you will manage the slides or I have to do it.
I hope you will do it, please, Dagmara, because we weren't realizing.
Yeah, because you requested control and that confused me. So I'm, yeah, so I'm doing then the slides. Okay.
Can you do that? Sorry, I definitely didn't request control. Not my forte. Okay. So thank you. Good to say hello to everybody and to ask everyone to keep on mute, please. Please go to the next slide. Okay. Okay. Second slide, please. Mara, sorry about this. It was unexpected. Thank you. Oh no, the one before that, something happened. I don't know what's happening. Typical, isn't it? Mara. That's it. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So good morning to everybody, and to say hello with our UNRWA hat on, and for me a UNESCO hat on as well, and to say thank you very much for letting us contribute to this process. It's been really interesting working with our colleagues in the other agencies, and for participating today. We are a hybrid, you know, and then we're not a country, you know, and we're not a pure UN agency. As you know, we're a UN agency, but we have schools and we have children. And very, very quickly, those of you who don't know, UNRWA, I think most of you do know, 70 years we've been operating, providing schools, education for now 534,000 school children, 8,000 children in the Tibet, etc. And we were born of conflict, so we were born of emergency. But we do have a very good education in emergency program, and this we'll be talking about more. Frost will go on to talk about this, but we've never had such an emergency. We know about conflict, and we know about one or two of our fields, as we call our, you know, countries of operation, suffering from emergency. So this was completely, you know, particularly new for UNRWA, even with all our experience in emergency. As I said, we're a hybrid model. I want to just emphasize a few key things before Frost takes the floor, in that what we've done is we looked at what we already had in place. And because we had a strong education system, like I'm sure all our colleagues here, and we had an education in emergency program, we looked at what could be drawn from that. And then we've looked at what we've learned in these last weeks of school closure, and then we're thinking, okay, what does that mean with regard to catch up and with regard to back to school? Because we see, you know, obviously there's similar issues for both. I just want to emphasize something else that's been very important throughout the process is because we have a headquarters and we have 5 fields with 5 very capable chiefs of education leading the programs, we also have something else that we can do, which was constant trying to review and to quality assure and to give input. And that was very important, to do the monitoring and evaluation at the field level, but at agency level for comparability, for quality assurance. So we as a headquarters could engage, we could look at the self-learning material, we could make hopefully useful comments, we could share other resources with regard to some.
Hello, we cannot hear you. Sorry. Caroline.
I think she dropped off. So maybe Frost, if you are there, you can take over.
Okay, hello everyone. In any case, we can move to the next slide, and once Caroline can reconnect, maybe she will take on from there. So I would be addressing the three main themes as preconditions for school reopening. The first one has to do with safety and health. In terms of key foundations that we already have at UNRWA for safety and health, we do have inclusive education policies, we do have strategies in this regard, and we do have a school health strategy that we will emphasize, that we have emphasized even more in this pandemic. We have instructions for school canteens that we're also reviewing within the context of this pandemic and the imperatives that it puts on the schools. We have active parents teachers associations, and we have worked a lot in investing on the safety and security and training of staff on a culture of safety and security within the schools. It was more geared towards protecting our schools from attacks rather than the pandemic itself, and this is something that we have learned through this experience. We have learned to emphasize more hygiene practices for children and social distancing. And in terms of what we will do as preconditions for ensuring a safe and health return for the students once the opportunity and the situation allows, is mainly we will work on further awareness raising. But here we would like to, and we are working on this, of engaging the UNRWA students themselves in developing these health messages to other students. We are developing agency-wide competitions that allow students to participate with posters. In this regard, we emphasize a lot disinfection of the schools, as was mentioned by the earlier presenters, and the need for hygiene kits to be available. If you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, I don't see the next slide, but
it takes time, the slide, so you can talk.
Okay, no worries. The second theme that I'll be addressing is the learning itself. And here, basically, we do have a strong foundation in the fact that we do have a self-learning program that was developed throughout the years of conflict in terms of educational TV lessons, interactive learning website. We have guidelines on how to use the self-learning program addressed for parents and addressed for teachers. And we have guidance on developing wraparound materials, as we know that all the students that were that did not manage to go to schools during the pandemic, they had their textbooks. So what we have developed were wraparound materials to support children to self-study their textbooks. What we have learned through the process, we're investing a lot in monitoring and evaluation. We're doing a lot of assessments and surveys with regards to assessing the student accessibility of the resources that were developed. We do realize that there's an issue of equity, and this is something that we will take forward to the next step or the next stage. And so in terms of going ahead and planning for school reopening, again, should the situation allows, we are looking into catch-up programs, especially targeting students that we realize that were not able to access the material developed during the last period. We are using probably this catch-up period as a way to test the models that could be used for school reopening, thinking of mixed approaches.
This is Caroline, whose electricity went down. Could I please say we're on the wrong slide, please? I don't know what's happening. Could we please go on the slide for the learning that we were talking about? I don't know why we're jumping around the slides. I'm sorry about this. I'm not sure.
I don't know. This was given to me as the latest version, and I don't know the numbering you want. So tell me which number you want.
Yes, please. The one before this, please. Before.
Number 4.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, Caroline and Frost, you still have 2 minutes.
We're very disappointed that something went wrong. The one before that, Dagmara. We're very okay. Do we want to go on, Frost? Because we had that hiccup.
Okay,
yeah.
So I'll finish the slides that I was supposed to say, so that we can hand over back to Caroline. That you're now.
Yeah.
So I think we can move on to yes, one last point on the quality learning, and this is something that we're emphasizing a lot, is the need for psychosocial support. So whatever planning we're going to do for back to school, it has to take into account and build on what we have already been doing in terms of psychosocial support for students. The last slide, the next slide is basically on communication and the importance of reaching out to parents in order to first convince them that it is safe and there are measures that are being taken at the school level in order for safe returns for the students. But we also realize that due to the COVID impact, there are socioeconomic impacts that are probably not favorable for Palestine refugees. We might see increase in poverty level, which might have a direct impact on access to education and having children back to school without facing the risks of dropping out to help parents here. And this is why we need to invest a lot and work with other sectors to ensure that there is support for the family in terms of cash assistance so that students do not drop out. And back to Caroline now. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm very disappointed both to lose you and to have this kind of without our slideshow. But please let me go on to talk about, going forward. And Dagmara, if you could go forward yourself, please, just 2 or 3 slides, that would be very helpful, just so people can see. I want to show the one with the big grid on, please.
Caroline, can you make that introduction in 1 minute?
Okay, that one, thank you. Okay, I just want to talk about, because we've got 5 chiefs. Now, one very important thing that I wanted to mention before I got cut off was, of course, we work with the host countries. So we work within the host country curriculum with regard to the schedule, but obviously there's kind of what we call wiggle room for us to do something different as well and to talk. So this was a plan from one of our fields, the initial plan, I think, from our colleague Moawi Amar, with regard to the detail when it comes to, because we all talk about the need to have double shift, to do this, to do that, but when it comes to the actual detail of thinking of what that means for the children, this is how detailed it has to be, because we have very large class sizes in UNRWA, as I'm sure many of our colleagues do, and we cannot change that. In theory, Class A will have 45 children in, but with regard to our response, we have to do something within that, so we can split them, say, into 2 classes. We can do alternate days, and we want to emphasize how we see the use of self-learning is very, very important, because we believe that self-learning can do many things that we're not yet doing in the classroom. We think of it as a way in to change practice, to encourage greater autonomy, for teachers to learn to ask more open questions, to encourage more formative assessment. So we do see a lot of advantages, and we're not talking about the online learning, that's one element, but for us there'll still be print, and we do have textbooks. And I want to make this point because all of us in a crisis like this, children have textbooks. So we can use the textbooks and develop what we call wraparound materials, which helps the child work through textbooks and supplement it maybe with TV, with online. We don't have to produce something totally different, and we certainly can't necessarily do that in UNRWA. So I just want to show the next slide, please, and then we'll draw. That it's very, very detailed, the kind of planning you have to do. Have the next slide, please.
So can you see?
Okay, next slide, please, just to finish it off. Thank you. Okay, so we have to plan. Thank you. We're finishing soon. Okay, so we've got the key drivers, and the key driver, of course, is social distance, and obviously the health, which we've all talked about. Our children have got to be kept, apart. We've got to think of ways, and we see on the television Denmark with its 15 children, and it's all wonderful, and that's not the reality in our region, and certainly not the reality for UNRWA. And we've got to, as I said, we've got to think about financially. We can't say, oh, we'll have all these classes with only 10 children in, because that would cost a lot of money. Could we go to the last slide, please, just for me to close? So we need to be planning. I've put my glasses on. Next slide, please. Thank you. We have to plan at different levels. No, the slide before that, please. I'm feeling that we're suffering here. I'm not sure. Thank you. We need to plan at different levels. We'll never be able to say this is the size that will fit all, because even in a certain area of a country, there'll be different dynamics. The schools will be different sizes, the children will be different numbers, and we need to therefore have these basic principles, like maybe, as we've heard colleagues say, younger children should do less self-learning, etc. Maybe the core subjects, maybe alternate days. The social distancing is our key principle. But then we have to see around those key principles what it actually means at school level, and we have to think, as Ross has talked about the psychosocial dimension. We have to use the self-learning to really use it now, to use it even in if we go back to school in September and there isn't a COVID crisis. Let's use it. Let's see how it can help change practice. And we can get the feedback from the teachers, because if the children are having one day when they're looking at self-learning, whether it be textbooks or high-end online, and then they come back to school the next day, we will get real feedback, in real time about the self-learning that we did and about what else we need to do. We need to really think about the teacher support, because as many of our colleagues have mentioned, teacher may not know how to support this kind of learning.
Thank you so much. We will have to
it's just I got cut off earlier.
Sorry, Caroline, we have to move you because we are running out of time. Sorry, thank you very much.
We feel very, very hard done by, but we thank you very much, Dagmara.
Well, thanks to you and Frost. We always learn from UNRWA experience, especially in psychosocial support. That's an important matter you mentioned. So with your presentation, we will end the country presentation. This was definitely a rich session. I thank all the speakers for sharing their time, their experiences. And we give now back the floor to Dagmara to continue with the discussion session. Thank you.
Excuse me, can you hear me?
Sorry, we cannot now allow you in. I just want to thank the speakers, and please, the others, mute your microphone, because there will be now a session of questions, comment, and answers. But we have to do it systematically. We are running out of time a little bit. We are 15 minutes late, but with your agreement, we can continue 15 minutes after 1 o'clock. So now I will hand over to my colleague Khadija and Frost. Khadija is from UNESCO, Beirut, Frost from UNRWA. They will manage this session of question and answer. So they monitored your comments in the chat function. But also, if you want to talk, you can use the hand raising symbols. You can raise your hand and then they will give you the floor, or I will give you the floor. I want, before giving the floor to Khadija and to Frost to moderate this session, that is hopefully more interactive, I want to also remind that after the webinar, we will translate the proceedings into Arabic, so you will get the recording with the Arabic translation. Then there will be a report of this webinar, based on which we will build then the mid-July workshop that will be a follow-up. So Khadija and Frost, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dagmara. Good afternoon, everyone. So I've been following the chat box, and there are 2 questions I would like to start with. The first question was asked to the UAE. The question is DUN an open resource? And the second question is a more general one for everyone, and it is, given the implications of reopening, how do we manage the challenges that arise when we reopen schools? And I'll open the floor to our participants. If you could just raise your hand if you would like to speak, using the raise hand icon, and then we will give you the floor. Over to UAE, our colleague in the UAE, if she wants to answer the question on D1.
Yes, can you ask, can you say the question again, please? Sorry.
Yeah, the question is D1 an open resource?
Yes, it's a platform that is open for all of the students and parents who are registered in the main platform, which is Al-Manhal. You have to have a username and password and register.
Okay, so I think what they mean by open resource is it open to the public? So that in that case, it's just open to the users who have registered.
Madrasa is an open resource for everyone. Madrasa is open resource for the public. Madrasa.
Okay, would you be able to share the link in the chat box just so that the colleagues can refer to it?
Sure,
Thank you.
Sure,
Thank
no
you. And then I'll repeat the second question, which is a more general one for everyone. Given the implications of reopening schools, how can we manage the challenges of reopening? Maybe we can start with Dakmara to give a few thoughts, and then maybe Adriana, and then maybe Caroline, if that's okay. Dakmara, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, because I see, Khadija, there are several people who would like to talk, so we should give them the floor. But yesterday, when we prepared for this session and we reviewed with our colleagues from UNICEF and from the World Bank, the last minute kind of preparatory things, we said that maybe it's not so much about reopening school, but preparing the next school year, because from what I see, there is still a lot of uncertainty floating around. People maybe don't know exactly what we don't know. Nobody knows what will happen. And still we know that a new school year has to be starting quite soon. So, and I think one challenge would be to combine, indeed, like many speakers said, the face-to-face and online possibilities. And I liked very much the way Dr. Lubna Al-Shamsi called this, to go back to a new normalcy, or kind of a new normal schooling, because it's not going to be the same as we were used to be with. So a challenge, I think, would be to consider that we need to prepare for a new school year, but it's not going to be the old way, probably. We need to prepare to combine the different possibilities, because I was shocked, really. I mean, I was surprised. I watched about school reopening in France. You know, they decided to reopen schools quite recently. And what they showed in a school was that they reduced the number of students in a class. They had 16 students in a classroom to respect the social distancing, and then there have been other students from the same class working in the corridor and working online. So the teacher was 2 meters far from them, but they were looking at the teacher through their computers, but they were physically present in school. So it's face-to-face, going back to school, but still keeping up with these possibilities offered by distance learning. So thank you very much. And I think you should give the floor to the people who raise their hands.
All right, let's give the floor to the participants who have raised their hand. I'm just trying to show the names. If you've raised your hands, can you raise it again, because the hands are no longer there? Sorry about that. I see the Ministry of Syria wants to say something, so let's start with them until the hands are raised again, because they've disappeared.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your meeting, for conducting this important meeting. Can you hear me, please?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
We are so sorry to join the meeting because for a technical problem. I would like to give a small summary about the procedures at the Ministry of Education in 2-3 sentences. As you know, on 16th of March, the education process stopped. Schools stopped. We had to cope with the situation with different procedures and different mechanisms. Providing through educational satellite channel like lessons, platforms, educational platforms. We have blended learning. We have to provide the educational loss for all Syrian students. In fact, it's a big challenge. As you know, after 8-9 years of crisis in Syria, we have the COVID-19 crisis. And regarding the final exams of baccalaureate, grade 12 and grade 9 basic education, postponed, as you know, till June 21st. For the other classes, they are promoted based on their results on the 3 quarters of the year. And in the process of preparation for the next coming school academic year, we have 3 possibilities. The first one, if Corona is on a short scale, low scale, we can open the schools in September, and we can allocate 2 weeks according to a plan designed before to compensate the educational loss. And the second scenario, we have if corona is disseminated, but in not a big scale, not a wide scale, we have we can shift schooling, and we have to make the classes like 4 hours per day, and to use, for example, Saturday in education. And the third one, and it's a bad if wide spread the corona COVID. It depends on the situation, and it's a global issue. We have taken, as you shared before, and I am one of the team of Ministry of Education. We are very happy to listen and to watch your procedures. As you said, safety and of children, of kids, of teachers, of staff. Number one, it's a priority. Then it is coming the preparation of educational lessons, and we are in the process of preparing about 2,500 classes, lessons to be broadcasted on education TV and educational platforms. But we are facing different challenges. As you know, the crisis, we have double crisis. We have provide online training, and this seminar, this forum is very important to learn from you and by you. Thank you so much for allowing us this opportunity. Thank you for everyone.
I'm going to give the floor now to the Libyan Ministry of Education, and then we will take the 4 raised hands we have. Libyan Ministry of Education, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. It's nice to meet all of you. Honestly, I would like to talk about what we have done in Libyan Ministry of Education. I would like to talk about the subject of this webinar, which is reopening school. So all of us are facing this situation, how we can open our schools with safety and with full, can we say, satisfactory from parents, teachers, students, everyone. Schools and students, parents and teachers will confront a new reality during the reopening process, especially in this time. For example, parents may be uncertain to send their children to school. So if we spend a lot of money to reopening the school, then the attendance will be lower. So what we can do if we face this type of problem? Also, teachers will likely face higher workloads, which is will affect the quality of education regarding the time of schools closure. Another thing is learning gap may have increased for students because of the lockdown of period. It's more than 2,000 months. Some areas or some countries are more than 4 months. So the students will be at risk.
Okay, 710.
There maybe will be a tighter budget, especially given the additional measures schools will be required to take. We need a lot of equipment, facilities regarding reopening schools because the coronavirus affected or negative affected. Also, we need to support infrastructures such as transporters, catering service, all these things we have to take on our mind, because we are looking for something. We are in a critical time, and we need, if we want or if we decide to open our schools, so we need to be sure it's good to open with satisfactory of all those people involved. I mean, the stakeholders of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to go to the raised hands now. So we'll start with Mohammed Akrayem, and then I'll go to the others. Mohammed, you have 2 minutes, and then I will need to move on to the other colleagues. So Mohammed Krayem, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is Mohammed Krayem, Deputy Chief of Education, Syria, UNRWA. Thank you very much for this participation and this chance. I wanted to ask the Minister of His Excellency Minister of Education in Egypt about the project. He said that the project, the situation was that it was a project based instead of exams for some grades. I wanted to highlight something related to what does he mean by a project instead of exams? Does this mean that they had projects, online projects, or practical projects? What kind of projects? How did they evaluate in order to transfer experience? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Khadija. I have to respond because His Excellency Dr. Tarek Al-Shawki had to leave the meeting, so he's not with us anymore.
Yes.
But we will forward your question. So we will also do a summary of the questions, and we will share it with all the participants and the countries that have presented. So we cannot respond to this question immediately. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to the other participants. Muawiyah Ammar, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. So that I would like to add what Caroline already. I am Muawiyah Ammar, the Chief Education in West Bank UNRWA, and already Caroline clarified our plan for the reopening the school. So that the challenges are the following, because colleagues are asking how we will go back to the schools with the same resources. The most challenge is the resources. If we would like to implement or enforce the distance, the physical distance between the children inside the classes, this means that we are going to split more sections, and splitting sections means more teachers, and by the end salaries and fund. And this is the huge challenge we are facing for the now, especially we are in the UNRWA facing a huge financial crisis to do that. But what we thought is the following. We already have the curriculum, and the textbooks were developed according to the curriculum, so that the children will learn, as an example for Arabic, 7 periods per week. So that what we will remodel the teaching process, learning process, that the students will learn face-to-face part of them, about 2/3, and the other 1/3 will be converted to self-learning material and study with the follow-up of the teacher. And this we will decrease the face-to-face appearance for children in the schools every day. And by using the same number of the teachers, we will split more sections. We will not use further or extra budgets, but somehow for operational issues, and it will depend also on the capacity of the school itself, if they have additional classrooms to do such that. Because if we would like to open more and more sections, we may need to go to the double shifts, which we dislike to do such thing. So that it depends on the capacity of the school, the location, the camp itself, as we do in UNRWA. And I think that it is the most appropriate, feasible model we can implement, especially that until now the pandemic was not concluded, and there are fears that it may come back in the coming fall. So that let us be ready to introduce the blended model of a school face-to-face and self-learning during the coming school year, which we are planning to do this in UNRWA for the now. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Muawiyah. I turn now to Lubna Shamsi. Lubna, the floor is for you.
That was to answer the first question.
Oh, okay. To the next one, Mohammed Hawash, the floor is for you. Mohammed Hawash, are you still there? Okay, it seems that he's not here.
I'm here. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Sorry. My name is Mohammed Hawash. I am the General Director for Counseling and Special Education in Palestinian Ministry of Education. Actually, we have the emergency situation in Palestine by the 5th of March. And actually, we have the same dates for the National Palestinian exam, and it was by the 30th of May. And we have been ending the semester of the scholastic year in the same time. Unfortunately, I think we are not doing like other countries that we are taking the National Palestinian exam to next July or to the late of June. We are taking it at the 30th of May, but there is a cooperation between all of the ministries of the Palestinian government, like the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Interior, and etc. And we are very, very ready now to have about 78,000 students who will go to the Palestinian national exam, which we call it Thanawiyya Ammeh. Actually, we have from the 4th of August until the 6th of September, a 1 month for rehabilitation for the students or remedial programs. And I think there would be also some summers for and training courses by Zoom and etc. to train teachers how to use all of the media, to train teachers how to manage the classrooms. What is important now that we have some challenges about maybe the psychosocial support programs that will use for our students. Actually, we believe that not only the students need the psychosocial support, but I think also the family of the teacher, that they are about 60,000 teachers, they will be back again by the 4th of August. And by the 30th of May also, we have about maybe 2,000 teachers will work in the Tawjihi exam or the Thanawiyya Ammeh exam. This is the situation in Palestine, but I think it is a little bit complicated because it is a little bit very, very close to the Israeli occupation, because they are the limitation, and they have a very high victims of the COVID-19, while we are in Palestine a little bit, we are controlling it in a very, very good way, but still we have some fears of the way of that they have the victims of the COVID-19 from the Israeli side. Thank you for listening to my words. Thank you.
Yes, Khadija, I have to step in. We have very little time left, so I want to remind our colleagues, the participants in this webinar, that we will share a template for all countries in our region to complement this information they provided today, and to have a platform to share with the report of the webinar, the situation in different countries, the strategies they think of with regard to the next school year and to reopening schools. So then maybe you have time for 2 more questions or comments, but if they are addressed to the present speakers, to the speakers that can answer now, otherwise the country presentations will be turned into templates that we will kindly ask countries to fill in after the webinar. Thank you. So maybe 5 minutes altogether and we finish this part.
Okay, we have one more person who has requested to speak. Salim, if the floor is yours.
Hi all, and thank you very much for this webinar, which is very useful to all of us actually. Thanks to my colleague Muawiyah, who raised actually the same issue and I'm planning to raise, but just to highlight, and it's not a fundraising call actually, but rather we need to look seriously into the cost of reopening the schools in a different situation, take into consideration the well-being and the safety of children, the hygiene practices, the cost of the material over the school year as we are changing practices again, the quality, take into consideration that we need to guarantee that all the children, no child is left behind, or have the opportunity to join the schools or to join online learning. Take into consideration the experience here in Lebanon field that 30% of our students couldn't participate on the online learning because of communication assistance, for example. So we need to look into this vulnerable category of students and to provide them with communication assistance, devices, smart devices, or whatever, internet or whatever. And the capacity building also, all of this actually implies a lot of cost. And as Muawiyah mentioned, take into consideration that it's the financial circumstances that is imposing and impacting all programs in UNRWA and in others also. We need to highlight this and take this into consideration in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Salim. That's all our speakers. I just want to turn your attention to the chat box. You'll see that Adriana is asking you all to respond what issues you would like to discuss in more detail in the next webinar. So if you have any suggestions for issues you would like to be covered in the next webinar, please put them in the chat box. That's all from me. Thank you all for your inputs. Over to Dakmara now to wrap up.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you also, Adriana Fogelar, for this suggestion. So please, colleagues, share with us, you have our contacts, share with us your ideas, your needs to be addressed in a second, longer and more in-depth, maybe webinar. This was just a kick-off discussion to frame the different ideas, the different pillars we have to think of with regard to school reopening. And now at the end, I would hand over the floor to our colleagues from UNHCR and from World Food Programme to moderate the last session of wrapping up. So please, Irina and Maria.
Thank you, Dakmara and Hadija. Good afternoon, colleagues. I will speak on behalf of both agencies for moderation purposes. We proceed to a concluding session now, and before I turn to our colleagues from World Bank and UNESCO, I would like to thank all the presenters and participants for such a truly enriching exchange. Undoubtedly, the scale of COVID-19 situation and impact on education and learning for children and youth calls for the concerted efforts at all levels on the part of education actors, and formation of regional framework is a great opportunity and also an evidence of such concerted effort taking place in the region. As highlighted by our dignified speakers, it is also a high time for innovative solutions and expanding partnership to identify opportunities, pursue tailor-made solutions at the national and regional level. It was evident from the presentation that we had today that from the onset of pandemic and school closure, quite a number of countries in our region progressively implemented an array of solutions, such as activating a national online platform or enhancing the use of access to the ones that existed before the crisis. So it's really exciting to see that the innovative solutions continue to be an integral part of the school reopening planning processes. And as elaborated by Dr. Yarek from Lebanon, while these solutions entail the numerous challenges and boosted innovation processes, equity in access to online and regular learning remains a major concern for children and youth from refugee, returnee, stateless, internally displaced communities, as well as children with disabilities and those coming from economically and socially disadvantaged communities. During this time, as you know, a lot of families have been impacted by the limited to non-existent access to livelihoods and financial assistance. So the situation of youth and children from those groups and communities definitely requires a special focus in the planning framework. And to that extent, consideration should be given on ensuring their access to school feeding programs. We also need to be mindful of the fact that services for children with disability and child protection services have been affected to a different degree by measures imposing social distancing. And there's been an increase increase in violence reported during the period of confinement measures in some parts of the region. Certainly, all these considerations require a strong coordination, and as development and humanitarian partners in this group, we would like to reaffirm our support to the states in planning for a phased approach, prioritizing health, well-being, safety, and remedial learning at the intersectoral level. Collectively, we are looking much forward towards ensuring that the region advances steadily towards the principal objective of making the national systems more accessible, inclusive, quality-driven, and in line with the aspirations of SDG 4, as Dr. Hamami mentioned in the very beginning of this webinar. So without further ado, I turn to Mr. Kamal Braham of the World Bank and back to Dakmara of UNESCO to take us through the pertinent recommendations and next steps. Thank you. Over to you, Kamal. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will start by thanking our colleagues from UNESCO and UNICEF who took the lead in organizing this webinar. Frankly, the discussion has been very rich, and it will be very difficult maybe to summarize. So I will rather, reflect a bit on what I have heard today and also what we have seen over the past few months. First, it has been mentioned by Dr. Hamid and Ted and other colleagues. We really feel that this is, I think we are all aware that this is an unprecedented, crisis, which means that we are really, all the education systems, all of us in the educational community, we really have to learn in real time. We don't have best practices that have been documented, assessed, evaluated. So we are basically, so that's the importance, I would say, of such webinars and events where experience can be shared on real time. The second particularity is, sorry, I'm hearing someone. So second is the uncertainty about the pandemics, which makes very difficult for education systems, education ministries, to have firm plans. So most of them, and we have heard from what Lebanon did, what Morocco and others, is really have some kind of moving plan. So having some flexibility in the planning to adapt in the situation. And we have seen in some countries where we have seen opening and the reclosure of schools. So we have to keep this in mind. What we have seen over the past 4 months, and most of the education systems, they have been trying to cope with the situation of school closure. So we have seen a great effort on digitalization, with countries starting from different situations. So it was very interesting to hear the experience of Egypt, where in very short period of time, they were able to develop this such sophisticated platform that Dr. Shawqi presented earlier. And other countries like Emirates, which were already ready, and it probably helped them, to be full speed very quickly. But overall, all countries made an great effort, and I'm sure they will learn from this experience. Second thing is clearly priority has been given to exams, and I think most of the countries, they kept final exams for key transitions, particularly the one at the end of secondary education. But we have seen also some other examples, like in Lebanon, where they had to cancel the exam. Now looking ahead, particularly in terms of going back to school or reopening of the schools, I see 4 dimensions that have been considered by the various Ministry of Education that we heard today. First priority is health, clearly for everybody. This means reducing the crowd in schools, so having enough students at the school at the same time. 2, social distancing, that you have to cope with, smaller class sizes. 3rd, hygiene, with all what it means, to make sure, masks, etc., to make sure that students and school workers, including teachers, are protected. 3, the feeding dimension apparently is also a dimension that needs to be taken into account on the health part. And 5th is the management of potential risks and potential cases that can occur in the school. Second dimension is the impact on learning. So clearly, most, all ministries of education, they are thinking on how to catch up on curriculum, but clearly there is also maybe a clear understanding that this crisis, we don't know exactly how long it's going to take, and probably a continuation of some kind of alternative school models will make that probably many countries have mentioned maybe adjustment of curriculum to make sure that education can be delivered to all students in an appropriate way. Also, I think a dimension that is shared among all systems, I think because of the length of the crisis, everybody is aware that blended learning is probably the way to go. This is something which is not easy. We have seen the table presented by Caroline from UNRWA, which makes that it's not something that probably needs very detailed and very sophisticated planning. The third dimension is the social impact. And particularly in terms of equity. I think everybody is aware that the distance learning, despite all the efforts done through educational TV, trying to make it, internet access to everybody, is still not equitable, and that particularly vulnerable and poor families have unequal access. And I noticed the example of Morocco and Lebanon, who are trying to find ways, particularly through remedial lessons, psychosocial support. We heard about the Child to Child initiative and what is also done by UNRWA. So just to stress this importance of equity, how we can mitigate the impact of school closures and unequal access to distance learning opportunities. My notes. Sorry, I might miss a few things. So the fourth dimension, and it was mentioned not by everybody, but clearly the issue of costs. Clearly, I mean, blended learning, all the hygiene measures that needs to be taken in schools. We heard from Morocco, 20 million. They need 20 million masks per day to make sure that students and school staff are protected. So this will pose an additional burden in many countries on education budgets, which are already constrained, as I said, in many countries. Second is the role of teachers who might not necessarily be ready, and this is clearly an effort that need to be made. So this has been mentioned by a number of countries, but also not only in terms of readiness of teachers, in terms of manage and deal with the distance learning and the blended learning approaches, but also even in terms of managing the loads of the teachers for such complex blended learning. Third is the role of families, who probably are in this distance learning and blended learning will have to play a stronger role. And then the importance of communication and collaboration that was mentioned in a number of cases. In terms of maybe final points that I have notes and recommendations maybe from my side, I would say that first, as I said, because this is a crisis that we are living real time, it's really important to make sure that we share experience in real time, and that's the importance of this webinar. Today, I saw we had more than 170 participants. Clearly, not everybody had a chance to come in. So I would recommend maybe to have more of these webinars that could be maybe more focused, because I saw comments which were very technical that are difficult to address in such broad event. So maybe have more webinars, more focused. Clearly, maybe try to post the links on the various experiences that we are seeing, maybe on the global education website, or any of our partners' websites. Two is maybe to share access to resources. I know this might not be always easy, but it was. I heard some questions of people trying to understand how the model in Emirates and other countries, or in Egypt, are implemented. So if there are any kind of public goods that could be shared by the colleagues from various countries, I think that will help other countries. Final point, I think the importance of international support. Clearly ourselves, the World Bank, but also UNICEF and UNESCO, I think over the last few months, we have really tried to be flexible, to adjust our support to help countries cope with the COVID-19 situation. And if I say in more broadly terms, in our case for the bank, I would say the three first sectors that have benefited from such support are clearly health, social protection because of the social impact, and education because of the
impact of the confinement on school closure and learning. I think colleagues in various countries, of course, in Egypt, in Morocco, in Lebanon, in Jordan, and others, where we as a bank are intervening, have seen probably how we have adjusted our support really to support the countries in this specific crisis. And I have seen, as I said, also other colleagues, and other partners, of course, UNESCO, UNICEF, WFP, UNHCR, and other UN agencies, and also NGOs adapting their response. So that's for now from my side. Over.
Thank you very much, Kamal. So I think it's my turn now to very briefly try to talk a little bit about where is that we go from here. I don't want to repeat what has been said, but we will try first to provide a very good report of this webinar and to include all this rich discussion and suggestions, because it's clear that all this leads into the need of developing a new type of education policies that is linked also to the rethinking of schooling and of learning. I remember we used to say very often that learning is happening also outside schools, so it's not just schools. But now this crisis showed it very clearly that learning can and must happen also outside the school building, and it happens in various ways. Only we have to keep this concern of systematizing learning, of monitoring learning, assessing the quality, and actually sustaining the quality of learning, which schooling may facilitate in different ways. So we talk a lot about learning losses, but I think everybody experienced also a lot of learning gains through this crisis. It's paradoxical, but we learned a lot how to use different tools, including my teams, and how to network with one another. We are talking to one another more often through these new technologies, to different possibilities, and the same is happening to parents, to students, to teachers. Although, as everybody is aware, this implies also a lot of time, and we all work around the clock, so it's like a 24-hour task now, which has also a lot of shortcomings for our health and for our physical strength and mental capacities. However, this need for new policies, for rethinking of learning and schooling in these new times, new realities, we'll have to consider all what was said, scenarios, but also costing, incentives for different categories that are overworked, like the teachers. And again, it has to deal with the factors of uncertainty of what may happen if, and we don't know what that would mean. It's clear that probably the new school year will continue with several challenges. Countries will have to face the same challenges of combining different possibilities of blending their strategies, and maybe this has to be made clearer. And I take what Kamal said, that maybe we can help as international agencies in developing a platform where people can share their resources in a more systematic way, so that the access to those resources and different ideas and innovations can be eased. So thank you very much to all of you. I want to recall that we will send out also a template for countries to fill in, and this template will help countries to systematize this experience that have been shared even in this short time during the webinar. But with the report, we want to also have an annex that could be a resource pool for different interested people. And that's why we want to have at least a second webinar in July to help us see how can we progress towards the school reopening phase in a phased way, and as also Kamal mentioned, how to maybe address some more technical issues and to focus to go thematic wise and to talk about different possibilities that maybe people have to understand better, and to give also the speakers more time and more chances to be comprehensive about their presentations. But thank you very much and wishing you a nice day, but not before handing over to Dr. Hamed for the last word before we depart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tekmara. I will not take long, but I would like first to start by thanking all the participants for their contribution, the discussion, the presentation. I think it is a very rich kick-off, as we said from the beginning. And we are also promising that there will be another webinar in July, and that will be also followed or preceded by a ministerial meeting where we want to hear from all the minister about their efforts. And it's very good that to do it, all the partners today here to do that ministerial meeting to see where they are standing for the SDG 4, etc., in comparison to also the COVID crisis. The second thing is to our partners, actually, as a UNESCO, and also on behalf of the UNICEF regional director who just left us for another meeting. I would like to thank the partners, and I think it's very good that we are coming together to put all our strength, our resources, our technical resources, financial resources to help and assist our member states. So and let's do together this such of collaborative as one UN. Having said that, I would like to remind also our member states that the framework that we have sent, the international framework that is produced by the UN, UNESCO, UNICEF, World Bank, WFP, etc., we translated it into Arabic. That is an international, and therefore it is very important to be used at a national. It means you need to develop a framework for your own country. Don't talk haphazard. I know a lot of countries are starting to put strategy and framework, and that is why from the beginning I said to our colleagues at the different offices to start helping the member states to develop their frameworks and to cater that international framework into this. So I hope at the end we have several national frameworks which reflect the efforts and how to go back to school. One point before also I close, we talked a lot about today about the vulnerable, and I hope that when we do our framework, our going back to schools, whenever we are planning to go, we don't forget these people. They are the most vulnerable, and I think they deserve to be given attention and to have a scheme and a plan and a strategy that to bring them back to school. Psychosocial support is talked about, and the content is talked about. All these things, I think, in the framework, we need to give attention how to tackle these things. Therefore, again, thank you very much, and looking forward to see you and to see more of the member states the next webinar, and take care. Thank you very much again.
Shukran, Dr. Hamed, and shukran to all of you. So we now will depart for today, but we'll stay in touch. Shukran and goodbye.
Goodbye to all.